to jump on. We're just so excited that you're here. So we'll just give folks a few minutes to pop on before we get started. Alrighty, so we have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, but just so incredibly excited to be here with you all. You get to spend the next hour with me and some of my fantastic fellow women colleagues and student athletes and community members to talk about this wonderful day that we're all celebrating. So today we're here to discuss and or be on this panel for empowering conversations in celebration of National Girls and Women in Sport Day. So before we get started and talking about what this day means, I want to do a few things. I want to, if we were all in person, we'd likely be somewhere on the University of Washington's campus. So we're going to act as if we are so. So I'm going to honor the place that we're all convening as a part of. So the university, I'm going to read the Land Acknowledgement. So the University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this island, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. So I wanted to start with that and also say Happy Black History Month as well. So in honor of what we're all here to celebrate today, we are here on the 35th annual NGWSD, gotta love the acronym, to honor this fantastic day that inspires girls and women to play, be active, and realize our full potential through sport and how we can use that and that platform to really make an impact in the world. So this year that we have all gone through, this last year, 2020, and even the start to 21 has been incredibly, incredibly taxing. So we have seen a lot, we've experienced a lot, we've reflected a lot, and I think it really just hones in on how important and salient sport is to all of us and what it does for us and the power that it has from multiple lenses. So obviously, personally, it really teaches us about mental and physical wellness. From a social perspective, it really teaches us how to work together and empower those around us. From a historical perspective, it allows us to honor all of the women that have come before us, that have set the stage for us to do what we're able to do. And lastly, it really allows us to reflect on, again, this platform that we have to be a part of the change that we need to see in the world. So this day is really important to me for various reasons. Former student athlete, obviously work in college athletics, and I could go through my whole story, but I think this part is a little bit more impactful. So my grandmother, Mary Blanford, she grew up in the 1920s, 1930s. She's a Black woman, and she never had the opportunity to play fully organized sports. She never had the opportunity to go to college. When she played basketball, it was still half court. They had to stay on each side of the court. But just to know how far we've come to where I had the opportunity to be a college athlete, to utilize my sport to pursue a college degree, and now be working in it, to provide access and opportunity for women and women of color is just really, really important to me. So I like to start off with that to tell you what this day means to me. But we want to just encourage you that whether you're in person or whether virtual, we want to safely encourage you to celebrate and honor this fantastic holiday that we've all made and are here to celebrate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce or have our fabulous panelists who are here to drop some dimes of knowledge on us introduce themselves. So we'll go ahead and start off with Jen Cohen. Jen, if you wouldn't mind, and all the other panelists who jump on, feel free to say your name, your tie to Husky Athletics, and then just share a little bit in a sentence or two what this day means to you.
You got it. Great intro, Sheridan, and we're so fortunate to have you join our staff recently. Hi, everyone. Jen Cohen. I'm the Director of Athletics here at the University of Washington. Thank you for being with us all today. This day represents equality, empowerment, leadership, opportunity. I think it's a great reminder that sport has a place for everybody, and that sport is a great place for us to just practice who we want to become as women, as leaders. So it's a special day, and I'm honored to be part of this conversation.
Hi there, I'm Erin O'Connell, Deputy Athletic Director and Senior Woman Administrator. I think the first time I got to participate in a national Girls and Women in Sport Day was in the late 90s when I was a rowing coach here. And this day, the fact that we have it and it continues on, it's about storytelling for me and the ability to have a nationally recognized day for girls to learn about how a lifetime of sport, whether it's organized or not, is so important to them for physical, mental, and all those reasons. So I'm really excited that this has kind of stuck in our society and that we're able to continue advancing it every year.
Hello, my name is Shannon Kelly, and I'm an Associate Athletic Director here at the University of Washington and also a former women's basketball player. I had the great fortune of playing basketball here in the early 90s. And I think this day for me is just a moment to pause and reflect on all of the tremendous accomplishments that girls and women have made in sport and kind of honor that history. But then I also think acknowledge that we have a long way to go in terms of access and equality for women in sports. So I think keeping both of those things in mind as we have discussions today is something that I'm really, really excited about. And it's just an honor to be part of this panel.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jody Wynn, and I'm the head women's basketball coach here at the University of Washington. Thank you for having me on this panel, and it's an exciting topic to speak about. It's an awesome day. It's one of my most favorite days of the entire year. I grew up a daughter of a mother pre-Title IX that fought her way and paid her own way and made her own path to be able to compete in the NCAA tournament in women's golf at UCLA. And I've grown up in a household full of athletes, and to see how far women have come, but also just in the sporting world is remarkable. And like Shannon just mentioned, we still have a long way to go, and I'm thrilled to still be talking about this.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natalie Robinson. Thank you for having me on this panel. I am a senior on the beach volleyball team here at Washington, as well as the president of our Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And I'm just really excited to be here because going to practice growing up and even today has always been my absolute most favorite part of my day. And being a woman in sport is the best part of my identity. And I just think it's really important that every girl and every woman moving forward has the same opportunities that I've had and more.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm Alexis Grigsby, also known as Lexi Grigsby up there. I'm on the women's basketball team. I'm a senior here, as well as I'm on the board of the Black Student Athlete Alliance. What women in sports means to me is it gives me the opportunity to look back on the legacies that's been here and that has allowed me to play the sport at a very high level. And I just want to give acknowledgement and empower this legacy even further.
Hi, everybody. I'm Angie Mentink. I'm an anchor for Root Sports. I cover the Mariners, and we will soon be covering the Seattle Kraken as well. Once upon a time, I was part of the first graduating class for the University of Washington softball team. I'm so inspired to see how far that program has come once I left it. And as far as National Girls and Women in Sports Day, this day is very special to me. When I was playing, after I'd finished playing UW softball and I was playing professional baseball, I was invited to march as part of National Girls and Women in Sports Day in Washington, D.C., meet a lot of the legislatures to hear and to speak to them about the importance of Title IX. And the impact that it has on women. Mary Lou Retton was there as part of that group, Billie Jean King, and we were able to meet Hillary Clinton at the time. She was the first lady. And then the other thing about this day that I hope that people kind of remember as we talk about how far we've come and how far we have to go is it's National Girls and Women in Sports Day. And there's a difference. And when people use terms to describe somebody like me as a girl, it is a bit derogatory because I am not a 14-year-old girl. I am a woman, and there is a difference. And they generally, don't refer to men as boys. And so, again, I think it's to echo a lot of what we're hearing on this panel. It's a thing about how far we've come, but also still so far we have to go.
Awesome. So I think everyone's coming back on the screen. As everyone knows, we can see just through the introduction, this is going to be an incredibly powerful and impactful panel. So I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you more and hearing, again, the insight that you have to share with all of us on the call. So thank you for those fantastic introductions. Let's get in. They gave me lots of questions. We're going to try to cover as many as we can and cover all the different topics within an hour. But I just want to start off by thanking you all for being here. So we're going to start off, and I'm going to put my student athletes on the spotlight, in the spotlight to start us off and talk to us about what participating in sport means to you and what being a student athlete has taught you and how you can kind of translate that into all different areas of your life. So let's start off with Lexi.
That is a great question. I guess participating in sports as a student athlete has taught me that it's going to be a lot of work, but it's also going to be some of the most rewarding moments that you have and the growth that you see just from year to year, from day to day, and from week to week. And just being able to get through that allows you that confidence that I could get through anything, because when you feel like you're on the side and you're throwing up because of how much you run the last week, you're like, oh, everything else is easy.
Yeah, got it. Wonderful. What about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, Lexi nailed it. There's always the classic things you hear about, the hard work, the leadership, teamwork. But I think even more important that Lexi talked about is just enjoying the process of working towards something without necessarily knowing the outcome. So you're always going to remember the big wins in sports and the big happy moments in your life. But what you don't see is all the work that goes into getting those. And I had a coach say, you have to earn the happy moments. And you do that by getting through the hard times and learning how to improve. And in sports, that all leads to winning the big game that you'll remember the rest of your life. And in life, you get those big moments as well. But that doesn't come without the hard work. And I think that's something that I've really learned through athletics, but that I can use the rest of my life.
Absolutely. I love that. I wrote that down, earn the happy moments. I think that's something we can all remind ourselves of in quite literally all facets of our lives, that the happy moments, they don't come easy, but when they do come, you've worked for them. So we clearly also have some former female student athlete alumni on this call who are pretty impressive if we got into some of their stats, but would love to also ask that question of you, Erin, and you, Angie, too, is what has participating in sport and being a former athlete taught you?
Yeah, I will say the two big things for me are perseverance and this piece about, not taking success for granted and that it really is about the journey. I was fortunate to have a really strong career here as a coxswain for the women's rowing program while Angie was playing softball and Shannon was playing basketball. We were all here in the early to mid 90s, which is super fun. But we had a lot of success, and I didn't lose a race until, now I'm going to date myself, Pac-10 my junior year. Okay. We didn't just lose by a little bit either. It was like brutal. And we lost to the Cougars. Were never good in rowing. That somehow they show up and they blow us off the water. And it was stunning, because we just had this expectation that we worked hard, we won, and so I at the time, and we were able to certainly learn a little bit about ourselves in that moment and came back and were able to pull something together when we went to national championships where we came in third. But I didn't even at that time understand that this whole thing is more about the journey getting to those places. And so, as I've gotten into my career in college sports, it's something that I've, been able to reflect on. And some of those losing moments, have been more for the journey than even the winning ones.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of times people ask me, what do I take from my athletic journey? And I would say, I love the winning, and I miss the winning, but I also, and this sounds just absolutely insane, I miss the losing in the sense that it makes all those moments that much greater. And I think it's really important, at least in my business, to have thick skin. I think being an athlete gave me that. I have the ability to take constructive criticism and then get better. I think that's something that was really important for me as an athlete, to hear things, not take them personally, and then use those things. And it's never a surprise to me when I hear about, former female athletes going on and doing great things. Many years ago, back, I think it was 2007, Reed Tuitt asked me to be part of the program at the University of Washington, where they awarded letters to all of the female athletes prior to 1972, prior to Title IX. And it was just an incredible room with so many accomplishments. And those women had to overcome so much to be able to play the sports and raise money in car washes. And so, athletics, it just gives you, so much, just beyond the wins and losses and things that you can use in your life. And one story really quick about that night, there was a woman in her 90s who was part of the Rifle Club, literally used a walker to get to the stage to get her letter, and then literally tossed the walker and danced across the stage. It was just an absolutely fantastic night, seeing all those really powerful, really strong women get awarded their due.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And just the history, I think sometimes we can take for granted the things that we have. We don't fully realize how much privilege we have to be doing what we're doing. And that's what I kind of hinted on at the beginning, is just really, giving the women that came before us their flowers, because they went through hell and high water to get us to where we are. And then to be able to give them that honor and watch what that does for them is just so incredibly powerful. Shannon, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I look at Lexi and Natalie and I think about, it doesn't seem, even though it was really a long time, right, Erin and Angie, that we've but I look at you guys.
It was like yesterday. It was
right. I look at you guys and I look at what you're doing now. And then I think about you kind of being in our role, 10, 15, maybe 20 years later. And you guys are learning things right now and you guys are so aware of what you're learning now in a way that I probably wasn't, which is super neat. I will say this, I look back on my time, and I think everybody touched on the lessons from losing and all of that. I think the special relationship I had with those 11 women on my team that came from widely diverse backgrounds, very different from me. I think I learned more about myself and more about who I wanted to be by my teammates. And it's something that I will cherish forever. Those are relationships that I value, to this day. So embrace it, enjoy it. I know it's hard, but those are lifelong friendships and a sisterhood that you guys will have for a very, very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I love it. This is great. I feel like we're all just having a conversation, just sitting, having a, cup of coffee or glass of wine, just talking. I know you all are student athletes.
It could be coffee. It could be wine.
It could be coffee. There you go. But this is fantastic. So to shift gears a little bit, I know that a lot of people listening in on this call are working in sport or aspire to work in sport. So I would love to hear from whoever wants to jump in, just to talk about, why did you choose a career in sport? I think we all have our stories as to how we got to this point, but why did you choose a career in sport? And then how did you get here today? So Jody, let's start off with you.
To me, a career in sport is the best thing next to playing. So, I was told a long time ago, those that can't do, teach. And so, for me, I had aspirations of playing for as long as I could possibly play. I was told, continue to play. The working world will always wait for you. My journey ended my senior season when I had career-ending ankle surgery, and I was on path to go into physical therapy school, but I just couldn't stop the game and remove it from my life so abruptly. Something that had been a part of me my entire life, and so I got into coaching, and I wanted to give back to so many girls that with the sport that gave me a career, gave me an education, that gave me an opportunity and lifelong lessons and friendships along the way. And I've never looked back. I think it's the most rewarding experience you can have when you mentor and role model and provide for young women, and so I spent most of my young years volunteering and doing clinics and speaking engagements to little girls to show them that they too can, go to college and play sports or get into a career in the sport industry. It doesn't just have to be our male counterparts. So yeah, 25 years later, I'm still loving the journey.
Awesome. Miss Jen Cohen, what do you think?
It's funny. I'm sitting here, I'm listening to this, and I'm looking at all these amazing women, and I'm thinking the one thing that everybody has in common is that all these women have been elite at their sports. I mean, let's just first acknowledge how hard it is to play at the level and compete at the level that all these women have accomplished. So here's the good news for all of you out there that are on this call, women or younger women. You don't have to be elite to still benefit from sports. I'm the living example of that. So, I didn't get to play Division I sports. I aspired to work in college athletics from a young age because I fell in love with I was an athlete, but I wasn't elite like these women. And I fell in love with a lot of the things that Angie described. The joy of winning, the agony of defeat, community, belonging. All of those things drove me to this career in athletics. And what keeps me here now are the women that are on this panel, in particular, Natalie and Lexi, because what sports does is, and our staff is so tired of hearing me say this, but it is a learning lab for excellence. This is a learning lab for excellence, and it doesn't have to be elite like the University of Washington. It can be in any sport environment. We are learning how to be our best selves. And I look at our student athletes and I find courage and inspiration and an ability to stretch myself as a human and a leader. And I've learned from them in this environment, there's no destination on this thing now. There's never an end to getting better, but there's always a joy in the moment. And so I had a very different path here. And I think it's an example about how sports can change our lives and make us better, and that there is access for every person that wants to be in an environment to reach their highest potential through sport. And that's what I want to champion every day as the athletic director here.
That's awesome. Erin, Shannon, Angie, you guys want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, this for me has been a very full circle piece. When I was a student athlete here, at first I thought I wanted to be a sports writer, and then I entered in our SID office and learned I didn't want to do that. And there was a coaching position open with our rowing program, and I thought, let's try that out. Like, it's like being the coxswain in the boat. So a couple years into that, we were having a lot of success. I was having a great time, but I knew that I wanted to be part of something bigger. I wanted to be part of more teams. And it really was, like Jody said, a give back thing for me, because I had gotten so much out of my college student athlete career. So I wanted to do that. So that led to, getting the master's in sports admin, but the very typical journey, right, that you hear that people take. But ultimately, at just a few years out of school, I recognized that the job I'm in now was the job I ultimately wanted. So it's super awesome.
Yeah. Something that Jen just said that I think is so important about learning from your struggles. I always say, you know, in my profession at Root Sports, I don't learn much from watching a good show. I learn a lot from watching a bad show, you know, and how can I use that to get better? And it was the same way in sports. If I had a bad at bat or I had a bad game, you know, what do I take away from that? It might, you know, be a strikeout, but, you know, maybe I learned that second pitch was the one, you know, I really needed to hit. There's always something to learn from those things. As far as, you know, pursuing this career, University of Washington had a huge part in that. I was just adamant that I wanted to be a serious news broadcaster. And Jim Daves from the Sports Information Department came up to me and said, hey, we have this direct shoe-in with Prime Sports. And, you know, I think that you should think about doing sports. And I was like, thank you, but no. Okay. And then he came to a practice like 2 days later and said, hey, they've got an on-air internship. They want an athlete to interview other athletes, and I think you should do it. And, you know, there's a lot of other, you know, things that happen along that way. But I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go into sports and get my foot in the door, and then, you know, I'll go and cross over into news. Well, 20-something years later, here I am, you know, still covering sports with a few detours to play college baseball and learn bar tricks with the Colorado Silver Bullets. But what a fantastic role and decision that, you know, Jim Daves, for whatever reason, saw something in me and said, hey, I think this would be good for you. And as they say, kind of the rest is history. But I absolutely love my career in sports. You know, I'm not playing, obviously, baseball anymore, but I get to talk about baseball every single day. I get to talk about hitting, throwing with some of the greatest athletes in the entire world. And, you know, the worst thing that happens about, you know, a career in sports, as far as my job, is somebody loses generally. You know, I don't have to talk about all that sort of awful stuff that they do with the news departments.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think that just a few things I derive from a lot of what you said is just trusting the process, right? Like, I think sometimes we feel like we have to have it all figured out. And I think all of us have come to realize through our own journeys that, like, we quite literally never have it figured out. Even if you like have a plan, it's just really about trusting the process. And then, like, also from, I don't know this Jim Daves fellow. I'm assuming that he's a great human because Jen's given him shout outs in our private chat. But it's just thinking of him, think about the importance of, like, identifying potential in people and helping them realize who they can be and what they can contribute to the world, I think is really important. And that's what Jody talked a lot about is, hey, I wanted to give back, and this was my way to give back. So it's really pushing us to think about, like, what is my influence to those that come after. So I really appreciate that. And so to shift gears slightly, but still thinking about just this working world of sport, but also just being in sport. It is a very traditionally male-dominated industry, and traditionally white male-dominated industry. So for those that are working in sports and even the student athletes, like, you guys can shed light on this as well. But talk about some of the challenges that you faced being in sports, being a woman in sports, but then combine that with, like, how you've overcome that or what you've learned from that. So I don't know who wants to start.
Angie, I know you're going to go first on this.
All right, fine. Okay, listen, you know, I talked about it's fantastic that, and by the way, everybody's like, oh, you know, you're really a feminist. And I was like, what? Because I think that women should get equal pay. That makes me a feminist? Yes. But I'm really not the biggest feminist in my family. My husband is, and you do not want to go toe to toe with him. He's a professor at SPU. Aaron, he says hello, by the way. But he is, you know, knows Title IX sort of backwards and forwards. And Patsy Mink, who was a co-author, is like his hero. But you go back to 1972, and 90% of the coaches coaching women's sports were women.
Yeah.
Fast forward, 42%. Men are coaching women, yet women are not coaching men. Less than 3% of women are coaching men. And I just feel like this is something that we have so far to go. You know, we're starting to see, you know, the ceiling crack a little bit. Major League Baseball is starting to hire some female coaches. But, you know, the best coach should be hired. and more of those should be women. Jen, you know this. There's not a lot of you in your role. I think 89% or somewhere around there of Division I athletic directors are men, and people like to hire people that look like them. And so the key is to have more Jen Cohens, to have more women in these roles of power, so that more women in turn get hired. And not because they're women. That isn't what I'm saying. I'm saying because they're good, because they're fantastic, because they're competent, and they're amazing at what they do. From a softball perspective, you guys know this, Heather Tarr is an unbelievable coach. She gets the most out of her athletes. She's one of the brightest, coaches in the game. Could she coach men? Absolutely, because she's a coach. She knows the game. So there's that one thing. And then, you asked, there's another side of this where, you see it right now in the news with the Angels pitching coach, Callaway, who just got in a lot of trouble for his sexual harassment of female reporters. Certainly, I have had some things more in the beginning of my career than I would say now happen. And, those things shouldn't. And I'd like to think that it's two things going on. One, I'm at a different stature, if you will. And so, people wouldn't sort of try that maybe with me. But also, I do think the world is changing. And it is because of young women they don't take it. You know what I'm saying? I think my generation, when men did things, you were like, oh, okay. Hey, don't do that. And now women are like, are you insane? Did you just brush up against my backside? They will not have it. And so, there's two things that was two very different things, coaching and then women in sports in a very male dominated field and the things they have to go through. So I just spit out a whole lot there on both sides of that. But I say it all the time. This next generation, you guys are so much smarter than we are. You are so sharp. You are so empathetic. You are so inclusive. You are so unbelievably fantastic. And it makes me so excited about the future.
She just dropped the mic on that. You could tell that came from the heart. I felt that over here. I was like, dang, okay, yes, let's go. All right. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to add into that? No.
I'll add. Erin, you can go too. I've probably spent a whole hour on this topic because I personally believe college sports is still the most discriminating of all the structures in sport against women. And I think the pros are becoming much more progressive before we are. And so the challenges, whether it's harassment, discrimination, lack of equality in pay, lack of opportunity, lack of perceived credibility that you have to overcome, I'll be honest, those things all very much exist in a daily space in the world that I live in. I have more confidence, like Angie's describing, to address them. I have more optimism because I have two sons who would never do that to a woman. And I also believe, though, that all of those, I know you do too, right? And all of those challenges, though, have absolutely made me who I am and allowed for me to grow and develop in ways if something would have been handed to me that I would have never become who I am. So it's not okay, but I don't give power to it like some people do because I want to be the power for change versus giving the power back to the people that don't want the change, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does.
No, it does. I think that, you hit the nail on the head. And even what Angie was talking about at the beginning is how far we've come, but still how far we have to go. And Jen, I think I just want to pull out what you said. You don't give power to the people or the structures that don't want to see change. Take that power to yourself. So really honing in on what Angie also shared is this next generation, us, even on this call, is we don't even just have to pass it on, but we just have to continue to stand for what we know is right, even if it's not popular. But I really love that. Don't give power to those that don't want change. Take the power for yourself, even though it's hard. So I appreciate that. Erin, did you want to jump in?
Well, I was just going to speak a little bit to, that Jen already talked about. She's got her 2 boys. Angie's got hers. I have a son. For them to be seeing us in these careers, they don't know any different. And so I think that the future of this thing is in far better hands. Declan wants to know, well, why don't we have girls baseball and why are the guys not playing ball? He doesn't see any difference, in it. And so it's super awesome because these are the guys that are going to be the next round of it. So
absolutely, that's great. Thank you. All right, well that was a good one. We're going to shift gears a little bit. So to kind of hone in on what I introduced is like this last year has been something that we have never experienced, could have prepared for, even like probably made sense of in our own minds. But I would just love to hear, and probably just to shed some light on for those that are listening in, is what have been the biggest things that you've learned about yourself in this last year? That can be personally, it can be what's going on in the world, it can be about how you deal with conflict. I would love to hear just some things that you all have learned about yourself in this last year. I'm going to start with our student athletes because they haven't said anything in a while. So let's start with Natalie this time.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm just really inspired listening to the women who are in positions that I want to be in one day. And I don't know any different. I came through an athletic department that had women in senior positions, and that was just amazing. But to touch on what I've learned about myself and the world this year is just, and this might also be something I tell my younger self. I know we'll get to that later, but it's just to embrace all the change that's coming. And I mean, I think we can all agree that 2020 has had some of the most historic events of any of our lifetimes. And, I, at some points, resist change. And I think it's really hard for people to change and for structures to change and institutions that we grew up seeing the same things out of. But if we can all embrace those changes and contribute to those changes, I think we're seeing it around us. And I think I've seen that in myself. I have all this extra eligibility. I'm a senior. I have to figure out what's next, and embracing those changes can be really hard, but seeing the people doing it in front of me is really inspiring. And I hope to be that for someone eventually.
You will. Let's see what you think.
Once again, like Natalie said, thank you for just dropping the little gems that you don't necessarily always hear through conversation. But the biggest thing that I've learned about myself and just everything that's been going on since 2020 and now is that we have to fight for what we believe in, and no matter how painful it is, the only way we make this world a little bit better is through fighting the changes that we see on a day-to-day basis. And kind of bringing that to myself is also do as much as I can. Sometimes it's not always going to be this 100% at that day, but it's my 100% this day. And that's all I can do, and to protect myself and to protect my well-being through everything. So that's been one of the biggest aspects for me, at least.
Awesome. Shannon, what do you think? What have you learned about yourself?
Well, it's interesting because I'm in the relationship building business side of this department, right? So that's what I do. That's what my team does. And that's been extremely hard to do when we're not gathered and we're not together. So I think I've probably learned now more than ever that how important gathering and watching our student athletes perform is such an incredible connection and moment for the community and Husky alums and Husky supporters. And there's a big void in thousands and thousands of people's lives that they're not able to come and watch these incredible student athletes play and tailgate. And I mean, there's a community and a connection that's missing. And I think it's going to be so much sweeter, and we're going to be everything's just going to feel a little bit sweeter when we get back, because I believe this wholeheartedly, that we are the front porch to the university. We are the gathering place for the university. And I think I have been very reflective on how much I've really personally missed that. So I'm really looking forward to being able to watch these women play again and having the community that loves and supports them to be able to do the same.
Absolutely. Jody, what have you been doing to stay both mentally and physically well? How do you hold yourself accountable to that? Because it's not always easy, but I think we've had to practice a little extra as of recent.
Yeah, I think for me is always remembering that I have 15 young women that need the best version of myself every day alongside 2 daughters, right? So trying to have that kind of balance, listening a lot, learning a lot, and trying to grow every day with their immediate needs. You know, I think that's where I've spent most of my time over the last 8 months, is really kind of just trying to find another way, because the old way or the other way that might have been natural to me might not be the best way, right? So I've spent a lot of time doing that, and just really trying to listen. And, for me personally, I have a really hard time delegating. I have a hard time taking personal time for myself, because I always feel like I'm shortchanging either the young women on my team or my daughters. And so when I'm not with and connecting and talking over the phone or spending time at night or whatever off campus with the team or with a couple individuals on the team, then I'm doing that with my daughters and vice versa. So I just have a really hard time of finding that me time. But during the pandemic, we were forced to have a little bit more of it. And that's when I felt that I had a tremendous amount of growth.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to kick it to Jen next, because I always admire how much self-reflection she constantly does. And I think how she models it as the leader creates space for us to do it. Because I think just as folks who are in athletics in general, but I'll speak to being a woman in athletics, is that we feel like it's almost like we have to give everything, but not so much pay attention to ourselves. And I think I just preface that because I know Jen's going to say, something extremely like gem droppy, but I just want her to just emphasize the importance of focusing on self, and talk about the energy balance and that type of stuff. So go ahead, Jen.
You're totally on it. Well, I was going to say people think I'm really weird the way I think about these things. So you already set me up for that. So I would say, first of all, what a year for lessons learned and growth. Wow. I would say probably the biggest takeaway I've had this year is the amount of energy I was giving to the external. How much I was reliant upon happiness, my stability, my mental well-being, on things like approval or achievement. And I honestly did not realize I was that bad in the hamster wheel until this thing hit. And I had some time to start to figure out what the hell was going on with me. Why was I feeling this way? And so I've learned to look inward a lot more and turn off the noise even more, and realize that we're kind of sold a bag of tricks here on what really makes us happy. And the only thing that really does is our ability to be content with ourselves. And so through that, I just feel like letting go of those types of attachments has allowed me to have more, a kind of a kinder and softer, more compassionate approach to myself, which then allows me to try to translate that to the people around me, in particular the people around me that don't that we don't see things the same way. I'm really working on that kind of love. So that's my biggest takeaway.
That's very cool. I think to kind of tie in Jody and Jen's point is this whole notion of you can't pour from an empty cup. And we've heard that, but I think to really reflect on what that means, and really spend time with yourself, understanding what you need to do to make sure that your cup is full so that you can give your best self to whatever that is. If that's, playing basketball or beach volleyball, or interacting with donors, or overseeing quite literally every sport in our athletic department, as Erin does. There's just so many things that we have to do to be able to perform, but we so often just show up with the little amount of energy because we've put it in all these other places. So just want to really emphasize that. So we have about 15 minutes, but we're going to keep it going. I would just love to shift gears again to think about this whole notion of parenting or caregiving. So there's a lot of you that are parents on this call. and or people that are listening that might aspire to be a parent, a mother, a caregiver of some sort. So what is it like to be a mother or caregiver in athletics? And then what advice do you have for people who are parents and want to continue to rise in their careers, or those that want to pursue? What advice do you have for folks as they are parents, particularly women?
Erin, let's start with the Declan story.
Start with Declan, yes. So affectionately known as the main man in the department. But Declan is 8. He's in 2nd grade, and he is living his best life with through my career. And I was an athletic director at Seattle Pacific when we had him, and my husband stayed home to take care of him. And this has been, it's a lifestyle for us, and it's exciting and it's fun, but it's got its trade-offs, and the travel at times, there's a lot. I've been home for 11 months though now, which is a totally different deal in our house, and good and bad. But, I think for us, for my husband and I, it provides us with this awesome opportunity to be teaching him his life lessons sort of along the way. And the things that I glean from our student athletes, right? And the journeys that you guys are having, and how I think about that and use that, with him in age appropriate ways is just been awesome. And then he's got all these role models around here, and I think, during the pandemic, it's been hard, right? Because here we are, we're having football going, and providing an experience for our football student athletes, but no one's in the stadium except the essential staff. And it was hard. He didn't understand that, right? But it is what it is. And, so that's been a life lesson, being able to talk about the pandemic and what the pandemic has taken away, but how we're going to grow out of that piece of it. So, it's a balance, and I actually think work-life balance is a super fictitious term, and I don't like it when I see at conventions, the work-life balance panel, because we're just figuring it out day to day. Some days it's good, some days it's not, and you learn from it and move along.
Absolutely. Shannon, what do you think?
I have two really funny stories, and then I'll be more reflective. So, when she was about 2nd grade, they come in and they talk about what your parents do, right? And then you draw. So she gets up in front of her class and she tells everybody that I drive a golf cart around. This is her perspective, because I've brought her to game day with me and she gets to be on the golf cart, but this is what she thinks I do every day, is drive around Husky Stadium and say hi to people in my golf cart. So it's this total learning experience. Well, that's not the only thing I do. And when we moved from my favorite is because she only really knows, the people that I work with, right? The closeness that I have is with my staff. And so when we transitioned from Nike to Adidas, we were walking down to school and she was like, Mom, how is Jen going to know my size in Adidas? And I was like, I don't know. I will call her right now because I don't know. But that was her little brain as gear and golf carts, and Jen is, it was very, very cute. But to Erin's point, I think, one thing I know is that you don't want to be really good at just one thing, just work. And I think trying to be my whole self at work and whole self at home and whole self as a parent is a constant work in progress for me. And some days I'm great at it and some days I'm not. And I think if you just lean in every day to try to be balanced in the approach to all of that. And to be quite honest, time for yourself and your health and all of it. When it gets imbalanced, I can feel it, and I need to recalibrate. But I would just echo too, anyone that gets into the world of sports and that sort of thing, it's a lifestyle for your family. It's kind of part of what you do together. It's part of the highs and the lows together. And it's very much a team sport for your family as well.
Absolutely. Jody, what do you think? And then I'll shift to the next question. Oh, I think you're on mute, Jody.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it is an absolute lifestyle. I've been so blessed to be able to raise 2 daughters in college athletics. You know, from the time that they were born till now at 16 and 13, they've had sisters every single year of incredible young women, role models. You know, a funny story is they used to say to me when they were younger, they were very curious that the players actually lived at school, you know, because in elementary school you go home, right? And they had partners in their dorms, and they used to ask me like, wow, am I going to be able to live at school too? And who's my partner going to be in the dorm? And you know, they've been blessed to travel all over the country. They've been outside of the country, and they've just grown up aspiring to be the young women I've been blessed to coach with for all these years. And it's incredible to see the decisions that they make and their responsibility and accountability to themselves at a young teenage age. Because they know the accountability and responsibility and the choices that our student athletes made over the years, and we share so much together. So, you know, from growing up and pulling things off my desk in the office to going on road trips, sitting on the bus, going on airplanes all over the country, you know, being a part of the media, just understanding that has been a true blessing. One last thing, you know, there is that age, Shannon, like where you said she wants to know, like, do you do anything besides drive a golf cart, right? How cool is your job? And when my youngest got to be about 11 years old, she just like broke down and cried for like hours one night, and she just did not understand why mommy just couldn't have a regular job and I would say this is the best thing in the world. And she said, you're always gone. You miss all my dances and my events and whatnot. And why can't you just have a regular job like a regular mom?
Yeah, that's
Hey, Sharon, just to think about what Jody just described for all, because I'm sure that people that are listening really vary in their ages and whether they have families or not, and their kids' ages can be all very different. I think what you just heard, which is really important, is first of all, you can have a family and do this. Do not let anybody tell you that you can't. You absolutely can. The second thing is it's going to vary over periods of time where you have an situation like what Jody's gone through, and then as their daughters get older, they're going to reflect back and look at it differently. Yeah. My kids, they were such a shit show. Like they were known at UW for like breaking into the zone and like just like that's at football games, like pretty much doing everything wrong that they could do, and just like they were just very challenging physically boys. And they are my 2 greatest advisors in my job now because they're at the age of Natalie and Lexley. A little bit younger one that's a recruitable age athlete, one that's a freshman in college. And I run all kinds of stuff by them now and get their perspective because I want to be in touch with what our student athletes are going through. So these stages vary and change, but you can do it.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's the great reminder that I was going to say I derive. It's not always easy, but there's just so many lessons that you can learn from your kids, but they can also learn from just this fantastic environment that we all are blessed to work in. So before we get to the last question, I would be remiss if I did not talk about anything related to the intersectional experiences that women have. And I would love to, Jen and Lexi particularly, to shed a little bit of light on is how can we best support, advocate, empower women, all women? Because I think oftentimes when we can lump all of women into one category, but we do not all have similar experiences based off of our race, based off of our sexual identity, based off of our sexual orientation, based off of our ability, based off of our nationality. Like we all have different experiences, and it's important to acknowledge those and integrate that as a part of this whole, like, let's talk about women So would love to just hear your thoughts on if anybody wants to jump in. How can we better support and advocate for the experiences of all women?
I could go ahead and start with that. It's a great question. I think one thing is being there for at least your student athletes in any capacity you could be there for. Be there for your kids, be there for anyone who feels as if they aren't either being heard or treated the same way. Another thing is have a conversation with them, because sometimes just hearing the experience or hearing what they've gone through is the best thing or the most important thing that they need at that time. And I think we can all attest to this. Being heard as a woman is probably one of the least things that we get to actually have. And for someone to just sit there and actually be engaged with you in a conversation, whether it's about school, life, or sports in this case, hands down, the most you could do for a woman.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Jen, what do you think?
Oh, me? Oh, I feel like I've talked too much. Well, first of all, the world's going to be a lot better if more women are empowered. All women are empowered. I think generationally, this is a really interesting question because I'm the oldest on this panel, and the way that we were raised was that there couldn't be more than one woman at the table. And I'm really hoping that's not the case now. I think the challenges we have now so back in the day, it was more like, feeling like you had to climb over each other versus bring each other along. I think that's pivoted and changed. I think what women need to do now, though, is express and respect each other's differences and not compete within, like you said, Sheridan, the diversity of women.
Yeah.
So that we don't find ourselves within our women now trying to climb over each other for a different reason.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that fully makes sense to a lot of people, but I can kind of feel a little bit of that. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of the past, but it's different. So just go back to the fact that we are one, and we will be a better society if we can help. And I feel this way about men too. Everybody needs to be their best selves, and they need to be brought along and supported to be their best selves. But for women, I think we need more female leadership, and we need to know that there's a spot at every table. Just come to one of our executive staff meetings where you will see the poor guys. There's like one now. Everybody's got room, and that's you have to develop confidence in yourself to know that you will get there without at the expense of somebody else, but because you're lifting somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you. So just to conclude on that is to be able to acknowledge differences, listen, and then be able to express those differences and also respect them. So I know Shane and Rachel are probably on the end of their seat because we're going to go like 2 minutes over, but it's okay. So we're going to end with the final question that I'm going to ask each of you and try to keep it as brief as you can. But if you could look at yourself at any point in your life, it could be yesterday, it could be 10 years ago, it could be 20 years ago. What advice would you give your younger self? And we're going to go ahead and start off with Angie.
Starting off it's really weird through this panel, like listening to even my own stories and realizing that even though I'm very far removed from the University of Washington, the huge impact that it had on my life. You would describe maybe a wild child in college, really wild. And I had just...
I can concur that was the case, everybody.
It's true. It is true, yeah. So I had just did this article, and it was all about I like playing on the road better than at home because I don't need to worry about school or which one of my 3 boyfriends is going to show up in the crowd today. And I was chewing tobacco, and I was just nuts. I literally was nuts. And the athletic director at the time, Barbara Hedges, pulled me into her office and said, you know what? I think that I see greater things for you than you realize. And I don't think that you would be very proud of the image that you are portraying of yourself. And basically said, clean it up, kid. But the idea that this woman in that position would take the time to pull me in and say, let's go. You know what I'm saying? You're good, you're smart, you're fantastic. Let's start acting like it. Really kind of it flipped a switch in me. And so what I was going to say is, you will always be surprised. And I know this is a little bit different than the question I was asked, but the impact that you can have on someone with a bit of kindness or a bit of advice. And so never be afraid to sort of give it, even if it isn't received well.
Awesome. Thank you. Erin, what would you tell your younger self?
Whoa, that's hard to follow, Angie. That hard one. I would say, well, two things. They'll both be quick. Recognize when it's time to leave your comfort zone and actually do it. And the other one is, don't say no to anything as long as it's within the bounds of the law. Like, because the opportunity and the networking is going to get you somewhere.
Awesome. Natalie?
Yeah. So something that I have been thinking about a lot is just that I would tell my younger self is just to go chase all the opportunities that are out there. And if the opportunity is not there, then I have the power to go create it. And I think that's what all the powerful women that came before me have showed me, just that even if you don't see an opportunity, it can be out there. And every single one of us has the power to go create it. And so that's what I'm doing now, is just trying to chase down opportunities and pave a path for people behind me.
Great. Thank you. Jody.
Wow, you guys are amazing, first of all. We learned so much. But I guess along the lines of what has just been said is to love the grind of it all, embrace the hate, if you will. And it's okay to fail, because you learn so much more about yourself and about where you want to go when you don't do things right. So there's going to be a lot of bumps along the road, and to enjoy the journey and not just look for the dessert at the end of the year, but day by day.
Absolutely. Thank you. Shannon?
I would just probably tell my younger self to remind my younger self that I was very loved and supported, and that it was okay to be vulnerable to people, right? I think it took me a long time, and I'm still learning that. So if I could kind of talk to my younger self, I think I would remind them of that.
That's great. Thank you. Jen?
Sadly, I have a very similar story to Angie, where I had the same pep talk from another woman in my first job at University of Puget Sound. Angie, if we would have gone to college together, that would have probably been frightening. But in all seriousness, I look back and I don't remember my 30s. I really cannot tell you one memory that I know outside of having both my children. Like, it's like a complete blur. So I was pretty intense and really, so I'd say get over yourself. And that if there's anything I've learned in now being in my 50s is that we're just little specks, and there's millions and millions of people before us and millions will come after us. And that you need to take your growth seriously, but the rest of it, you just got to love and enjoy it. What a gift for us to be able to be here. And I wish I could have taken that drive and ambition and had a little bit more perspective when I was younger.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Jen. And last, but certainly not least, I want her to drop us with some gems. Miss Lexi, what you got for us?
I think the biggest thing I would tell my younger self is it's okay not to have a destination. It's okay to get lost in the process, the journey, the little moments that the hate, like Jody said, and just finding the little things that we can enjoy throughout everything. So I think that's the biggest thing I would tell my younger self.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just end. I could go through and share all my takeaways, but my favorite quote is by Tarana Burke, the woman that started the Me Too movement. And she says, "You may not always be able to enjoy the shade of the tree that you plant, but plant the seed anyway." So keep doing what you're doing. Keep letting your light shine. We just appreciate all of you so very much. Thank you to everyone who joined our time. We encourage you to share this far and wide. For those of you that need transcribing, we're going to hopefully be sending that out after with transcription. So we just appreciate all of you and thank you for your time. So we will hopefully see and talk to you soon, but happy National Girls and Women in Sports Day.
Go Dogs!
Go Dogs.